Is all about how do you measure and improve the quality of a hire. Whoo, this is going to be meaty. I know we always go over, but we're going to really stay on time today. So, this is the first one of the year, which I always get really excited about. This webinar is, like always, brought to you by Covey. So, as a talent leader, you are likely facing a lot of challenges, which is why we are bringing you these webinars. So, especially with providing a positive candidate experience while managing an overwhelming amount of interest in your open positions and doing all of that with a resource strained team, right? Everyone's running lean. It's getting even harder. I saw actually a report today that what 2025 is looking like, even more lean, right? So Covey Scout can quickly and easily screen through thousands of job applications and identify the top 5% of candidates and meet your specific criteria within an hour, which is bonkers. And it's helped top tech companies like DoorDash, Rippling, and Deal streamline their recruitment process and saving them significant amount of time and money. And it's definitely something I've used and my team have used throughout the years. So welcome, Corey Shaw. How are you? How are you today?
I'm wonderful, Brianna. Great to be here.
Oh, awesome. I love this. You are actually the one who brought up this subject. So let me introduce you. You are the founder of North Star Talent. You have been devoted to empowering organizations with an effective talent strategy, efficient processes, and relevant technologies, actionable insights to improve hiring, which is exactly what we're talking about today. You have 20 years experience leading talent acquisitions programs at TD Bank, Canada Life, Co-operators, and the Salvation Army. I'm very curious about that. Your track record focuses on evaluating business success by transforming people, process, and technology practices, optimizing an organization's ability to attract and hire exceptional talent, which is, by the way, not easy to do. We all talk about talent and recruiting, and it's just like, we have to do it right. And everyone's like, oh, that's fine. We look at resumes, we interview, we hire, we send, and we send all that out. It's easy, right? But it's not. And
It's not.
once we get it wrong, what happens?
And you hear about it.
Oh, we hear about it. And it's not that we hear about it, it actually costs quite
Yeah.
a lot of money. And I don't know if so I put that in the post, right? So when we were trying to get, people let's talk about this. How much does it
Mhm.
really cost? And my research showed that it could cost 30 to 200% of that person's annual salary, which is like
Yeah. A
so
lot.
do you, so when you're talking to leaders about, hey, let's talk about if we get it wrong, what happens? Do you start with that data or what do you start with? Because there's a lot of effects of what happens if you get it wrong.
Yeah, that's a great question. To me, it's what does a quality hire look like for that organization? What does the candidate experience look like for that organization? And I think it's a combination of, using historical data, internal and external hiring data, using examples of those critical roles that tie to the organization's growth or its revenue drivers, those types of things. And then it's that what I call that authentic discussion about what does success look like, right? And then you start to talk about things like, how we're using the organization's brand to attract talent, the technologies, the practices, the processes, and most importantly, having that trusted data on hiring quality. When you hire people that are productive and engaged and retained, and you really create that call it handshake with those organization leaders, because talent acquisition is no different than any other sort of corporate program. It's there's a process, there's a tech stack, there's practices, and those practices are measurable, and so is the hiring ROI.
Ooh, okay, you opened up so many interesting can of worms. So a lot of people want like the right person for the job, and they normally focus on them doing the job well. But what
Mm-hmm.
I heard is them being engaged and wanting to do the job, which in my opinion are two different things.
Yeah, it's such a great point, and that call it that. What does engagement mean, right?
Hmm.
And it means like different things to different organizations, right? But do they feel that they have a voice in the organization? Do they get good coaching? Do they get good access to leadership? It could be, are they able to develop their skills? Are they able to be career paths? So you break it down as to what that means. What I would say too is that is the organization walking the talk on its brand, right? And so part of that is, there's things called an employee value proposition, which some organizations call the employee promise. And people expect in organizations to back up that promise, right? And part of backing up that promise is looking at the engagement results, understanding that employees have a voice in the organization, and what are they going to do about that if there's a gap.
Hmm. So when you talk about the key metrics used and how you measure the quality of a hire, because that's what starts first, right? I always look at KPIs, the dreaded word KPIs. But like, is this like on a spreadsheet? Like how does this all go down?
It's a great question. It's to me, it's understanding two things. It's understanding what is the historical, call it mean or average, right? So when the company's been hiring people year over year, when they made those hire decisions, whether they were internal hiring or external hiring, what happened, right? What happened to engagement, retention, short, medium, and long term? What happened to productivity? What happened to performance? What might have happened to people that are moving through roles, getting promoted and moving across roles? Potentially what happened in terms of diversity. And so when you think about these 5 or 6 factors, productivity, engagement, retention, succeeding through role, these types of things, you can say, okay, the organization had pick a number, 20% turnover in the first year in these roles. And, through a good combination of elevating the hiring practices and finding the right fit for the role, and maybe turning on an employee referral program, whatever it is, we've been able to reduce that first year attrition to 15%. That sounds great, right? Because it reduces cost of hire. People are staying longer. But what did it do to the organization's, call it long-term talent objectives, right? So as we retained these people, were they able to go into different roles? Were they productive and were they engaged? So to me, the key is understanding what the historical mean is
Hmm.
and measuring these 5 or 6 factors. And then most importantly, saying, okay, now tell me about the so what, right? So as you measure these factors, if retention improved by that amount, what was the so what? Did it allow people to be more productive, more engaged, move through role, those types of things? And you can measure that stuff. And the most important thing is turning those activities into dollars. What was the impact to the organization's ability to grow or increase its revenue? Because oftentimes when you do better at those factors, it does
Yeah.
lift the economic envelope of an organization.
Right. And that's really what the company wants to see, right? At the end of the day. So are you doing this per function, like per teams, per seniority in addition to, or how does that work?
Yeah, what a great question. I really look at it in sort of 2 ways. Number one, most companies hire, sort of those classic entry level roles, right?
Right.
Critical roles
Sure.
that tend to deal with the customer more than any part of the
Mhm.
organization. Contact center, sales roles, relationship management roles, operations roles, right? And then as you think about the next cohort being those individual contributors that might have a higher degree of complexity to their roles. And as a result, they require a higher degree of experience or accreditation or expertise. And that's that second cohort. The third cohort is leadership, which I kind of break down into two, sort of those mid-managers and those executive leaders. And when you measure what does success look like, you measure it in terms of those four cohorts, right? So if we're hiring somebody who's more of that starting their career, or might be entry level, might be engaging with the customers, how are we doing at sales and net promoter scores and some of those measurables? But also, how are we doing as those people join us, and maybe in year 2 or 3 or 4 they're moving to other parts of the organization, because they tend to be a great feeder pool to
Right. Yeah.
enable that organization growth. And so yes, you can break it down another way by looking at finance or marketing or technology or sales. But even within those dynamics, you do tend to find those 4 cohorts: entry level, individual contributors with complexity, middle management, and senior executives.
Interesting. Okay. So then I have an interesting question, because, I'm in tech, right? So I think about, especially in the Bay, like we pluck them a little faster than normal, right? Especially in the startup world. And, shiny penny. And so I feel like quality of hire sometimes doesn't always go hand in hand with retention, but you could argue that it does, because I see the other side here, that it does, that a quality of hire actually means a fit on both sides. Where do you live there?
Yes, like the the fit on both sides is sometimes people will join an organization, and it might be because that organization is going through a period of rapid growth and truly transforming its product shelf. So you're hiring certain people that are helping enable that new place. And then they leave. They leave after, 18 to 24, 36
Yep.
months, right? That is not bad attrition, right? They came in to do a job, and that helped the organization change. Whereas, if you're looking to say, how can we improve customer stickiness, right? And those people that are building trust and rapport with customers, they might be in a sales role, they might be in a business development role, they might be in a, right? And how do we ensure that they're happy and engaged in their role, and so are the customers, and we're continuing to develop their skills, but it might be staying in the role 3, 4, 5, 6 years, right? That way. And so two different ways of looking at retention. That person with that customer stickiness, they leave after 12 months, and that's bad retention. That's bad turnover.
Right. Okay. No, I like that. So I like to look at it both ways, because the quality, it's a relationship, right? Like that's what happens when you join a company.
It really is, Brianna. And it's like that opportunity to say, why did you join the organization? What did success look like for you? What does it look like for the organization? And, that's that authentic discussion about the role, the mandate, where the organization is going. Like I always say, when people join an organization, they need to really understand the organization's overall strategy and its value proposition and its revenue drivers, because they have a critical role to play in that. So it's not just their job, they're part of that opportunity for the organization's success.
Yeah. So then from the recruiting standpoint, so like when I'm talking to a hiring manager, for example, I'll say, who do you want to clone? Like that's my question. Okay. Who do you love? What am I looking at? Right. Like, because I have to sift through profiles and profiles, and on paper, I want to know who you want to clone. And then now tell me personality wise who you want to clone, because that's different too. Right. So then when I get on the phone with your clone on paper, I can now see personality wise, are we on track here? But there's also a lot more to that, as far as going through the interview process wise, to make sure that quality of hire is actually accurate. So talk me through that, because now you have to talk to the team to make sure their processes, also per department, are all, lined up properly. Because I think that's how, when you talk about quality of hire, that's why I asked per department. Like, did you actually, quantify that? Because I know per department, lots of times they have different interview processes, which so
I'm with you.
so talk me through that one. What
I
advice,
know.
yeah, talk me through it, and what advice would you give?
In some ways, it's a fairly straightforward dynamic. If the organization has a really effective, call it perspective on its skills that it requires, its competencies,
Mhm.
its job architecture, right? To say, what are we looking for when we're hiring a full stack engineer in IT, or a salesperson, or a contact center person? And when we say that, if you're in contact center, you need to have really good relationship management skills, really good multitasking skills, like really good, call it ability to ask for the business. Like there you go. That's what we're looking for. So then you align your, everything from the application to the screening to the interviewing to the candidate engagement and the
Mhm.
leadership. And most importantly, you're measuring success. So you raised a great example, like the cloning thing. I love the cloning thing. But the second thing I answer is, okay, if it's Joe we're looking to clone, why? Right?
Right.
Tell me what Joe is doing, right? And as they describe that to you, it should be, what are the success drivers in the role? It should all link back to the job architecture. Now, my last point would be, circumstantially, sometimes things are going on. Like, for example, in an maybe information technology, and there's been an organizational strategy to move to a completely new tech stack, right?
Mhm.
Well,
Mm.
okay, that means that traditional hiring archetype might be different, because now we need folks that maybe have a little more curiosity, or they've got more experience designing and building and shaping versus sustaining. So there are elements of where that department, that area, and what's happening there. But the baseline should always be the job architecture and those competencies and skills that should be defined, so that then you can give a good candidate experience in terms of understanding if a person's the right fit for the role.
Yeah. So with quality of hire, and this drives me nuts, but I'll you're the expert here, but I already have to adjust in my seat. So when people get hired, I'm always dumbfounded when there's no plan for them. So when you come into a company and you're like, look, in order to make sure that this is a quality hire, we need to make sure the plan's in place.
Mhm.
So a 90-day plan is, in my opinion, is minimum. So when you're consulting a company, how long is that plan? Like, do you set for them? Or you say like just set them up for success, right?
6 months,
Yeah.
probably, if I had to put a guardrail around it. And then you say,
Yeah.
well, what does that mean? Right?
Yeah.
Well, it means that pre day one, right? Is Corey the candidate? Is he already highly aware of? Does he have the technology provided to him? Right, so he's ready to
Mhm.
go. Do, has he had time potentially connecting with some of his future teammates? Right? Does he truly understand the expectations of work from home or being in the office? Like some of those things. Move into that first month, that first cycle of time. It's a combination of building his awareness, or her awareness, about
Mhm.
the the or the way the organization operates logistically. Like how do you order, something that you might need after week one that you realize, and are you and your leader connecting regularly? You're starting to build their perspective on the organization's culture and its
Mhm.
value proposition, and that's a layering effect. I call it
Yeah.
that cultural immersion, right? And as you move into month 2 and month 3, it's deepening that perspective on the cultural norms, and it's how the organization makes money. What is its strategy? And so you get to like sort of that 4, 5, 6 month point, and the person is, you know, truly feeling like they're part of that greater purpose, right? So yes, they're connected to their team and their
Mhm.
leaders, and they feel like they've got the tools and resources to do their job effectively. But it's now saying, you know what? I am part of that organization. I'm part of its journey of growth or change, right? And that takes time. That takes that layering. That takes that immersion. So I would say it usually takes about 6 months.
Yeah. I love the greater purpose. And then, as a business owner for so long, I always look as to like how much wasted time we have. So for an
Mhm.
example, I have a girlfriend of mine who was at a company, and I'm like, hey, it's like, week two, what's going on? How you doing? You hit the ground running. She's like, I don't even have a computer that works. I go, what do you mean? They sent me an old computer. I'm on the phone with IT. And I'm just like, again, as an owner, dumbfounded, right? I'm like, no,
Yeah.
they're paying you to sit there, like I'm like, no, so, but, and I laugh, but I'm again dumbfounded. But small logistical things, to your point, can make or break an experience. And now she's sitting there thinking to herself, and again, it's like very early on in the experience, right? But she's also thinking to herself, am I in the right spot? Like, why is like something so small, right? In the grand scheme of things is a yellow flag, right? So when does it things start to become a red flag, which in return can affect her experience, but it affects her ability, to show up, because it's like, well, you have to show up for me too. So I guess I'm coming from the other side of the coin here on the quality of a company for the quality of a hire. And I don't know if you go on that other side too, if you're coaching a company on how they show up as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A funny anecdote.
Yeah.
I made a change in my career where I had joined the organization. I was there for about 6 weeks, and I said to my leader, I said, "Do we own this brand?" And she said, "Yeah, no, we own like 7 sub brands, right?" And I kind of had a sense, but I didn't know. And I said, "Well, they have an office like 6 weeks away, 6 blocks away from where I live, right? So can I choose my home office to be there instead of where you're asking me to go, which was like 20 miles away?" And she said, "Well, yeah, that'd be no problem, right?" Well, that was me bringing that insight to my leader. You kind of think it would have been the other way around,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
Brianna, you're so right. You got to have your computer. You got to be set up logistic, but it's like it's giving that person insights
Mhm.
on the organization. And I always coach the organization to go, like, don't assume they know, right? And that's that layering effect, right? And it's
Yeah.
everything from logistical checklists of meeting teammates to being very intentional about those 6 months, so you're continuing to. Another example is, I had a colleague, and they were going on a vacation, and they were literally at the end of year one in the organization, and they didn't realize that that company had a vendor relationship with a car rental company, and they had gone on their vacay and come back and heard from others, and they could have saved like $500 on the car rental, right? So they didn't
No.
even know that, right? So
Oh,
being able to give the insights about all the things that the organization can give back to its employees, and vice versa, that's on the company, right? And
yeah.
it's how you do it intentionally.
Totally agree. So I want to hit something that, I mean, I have felt like for the last couple of years have come on pretty strong, which is hard skills versus soft skills, which
Mm.
comes to the quality of a hire. So, how throughout the interview process are you advising companies to set this up and make sure that they're doing their due diligence on both sides?
Yeah, to me, there's a pretty clear distinction, right? To say, if you're hiring Corey as a full stack engineer or an actuary or fine, like, do I have the baseline accreditation and certification and experience with that specific domain, technology, or product, right? Like, that is the technical stuff. And that needs to be validated through a
Sure.
combination of the application process, the couple of the questions at the front end. And I say it that way because, that stuff should all be figured out, because you shouldn't be figuring that stuff out after the second interview, and the person's applied and they've gone through maybe a screening exercise, right? That's when you get into the interview, which is all about saying, okay, these are the success factors of the job. These are the skills and competencies and experiences that we really want to validate. But both sides, right? The person
Yeah.
wants to be successful in the role, right? So it's to say, okay, tell me how you know, are really good at change management, right? And it's that conversation where you're really zoning in based on their experiences and their impact examples. And they're excited too, because they
Mhm.
know change management's a critical success factor in the role, right? So it's separating those two things pretty distinctly.
Mhm.
Leaders love to merge them. I don't support that. I think you cover the technical stuff at the front end, so that you understand that you're not wasting anybody's time. These are mandatory things that you need in the role: certification, education, you know, experience that way, so that it's truly about fit to that team, fit to the role
Mhm.
competencies when you're getting into that, you know, that immersive interview experience.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. So all of the culture fit, culture add, soft skills and stuff is at the end. So you would flip it.
You got it.
Very interesting. Yeah.
You got it. Now, it's so funny, right? Because there's people, as we know, that are active candidates. They've applied to the job. They're interested in
Sure.
that. Then there's others that, you know,
Mhm.
they're passive. They've been reached out to. They've been sourced, right? So you do
Mhm.
need to do a different level of engagement with those folks.
Yeah.
There's a couple of technologies now that give them a sneak peek inside the tent of an organization for its employee value proposition, because people will say, "Oh yeah, I see the job descriptions. The recruiter's going to say the place is awesome." I don't necessarily believe it, right?
Uh-huh.
Because they're paid to say that. And I'm being authentic, right? There's
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
amazing recruiters that are authentic, but there's that skepticism from passive candidates, right? And so
Mhm.
there are ways to give them a sneak peek into the organization and start to talk about that cultural acclimatization earlier on, right? But at the end of the day, by the time they get to that interview, beyond the application and the screening phase, and now you're connecting them to the leader, it is about identifying, do they have the soft skills to do the role against the job architecture? Not do they have that Python experience or that actuarial degree, or whatever it is that you're asking.
Mhm. Super interesting. I love this moment because this is something that will play over and over again, by the way, this moment, because this is very different than a lot of companies do. So I like
Mhm.
this. We're kind of the Corey Shaw because I like it. Okay. So I know we're like literally already like getting on time, which is insane. But I need to know what tech, what do you use? What can help people measure and improve the quality of a hire?
That's a great question. So it's a combination of being really good at planning, right? And when you say planning, integrated planning, right? To say, we all say workforce planning. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means that, you know, the company has its business goals and its people reality. And how are you ensuring that there's a really intentional approach to say, in the next year we want to double our sales force, or we want to, you know, maybe contract over here or grow over there, and what does success look like? And then, you know, as you guide the process and the tech stack and the practices against that, against what success looks like, right? And it might be a more of an investment in a campaign to double this area and promote our employee value proposition. It might be, you know, we're going to spend more money on that sourcing technology. It might be, you know, we're going to run a leadership campaign where we're sort of having leaders advocate as brand ambassadors, right? It could be that, you know what, we want to do a better job of assessing the talent using this certain pre-hire assessment tool that way, that's getting at these behaviors and these competencies that we've never had before. And so to me, I'd finish by saying you have to layer the tech stack and the practices to the reality of what success looks like. It starts with that integrated planning. It
Mhm.
starts with saying, here's what success looks like. And then it's about harmonizing the people, process, and practices,
Mhm.
the technologies to be successful. And most importantly, that you've got trusted data, right?
Mhm.
Like, we are in the business of people, yes, but it's measurable, right? To say, okay, we said we were going to double the workforce in that area, right? We hit 90% of the goals, right? Here were the key success factors that we hired people that were productive, engaged, retained, diverse, whatever it is you're doing. And this 10% that we didn't hit the mark, here's why, right? And here's the learning so you can get better in the next cycle.
Yeah. So does this also come with surveys from employees?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
candidates, right? The
Right.
beautiful
Right.
thing with technology today is you can survey them, till the cows come home, right? And
Yeah.
all the different areas. And it doesn't have to be long, surveys. It can be just quick hits
Mhm.
about what is their experience like from application to shortlist to onboarding to that employee and that voice, right? And
Mhm.
see how the organization is doing at that experience, whether it's for candidates or employees.
Yeah, and then, I mean, I feel like I have to just say it, but, I want you to confirm it, but this is everybody's job, right? It's not just
It is.
recruiters, it's not just hiring managers. It's, even if you're hiring engineers, it's still a product manager's job. It's a cross-functional, job, right?
You know what? At the end, I always say this: leaders have two hats: their functional hat and their talent hat. Like, I've
Mhm,
been honored to lead big talent acquisition teams, right? So I'm wearing two hats. I'm wearing that people leader hat. I've got to try to be an inspirational, motivational leader that runs a really good recruitment program. The second hat I'm wearing is a talent hat. I've got to
mhm.
think about my team in terms of how many people, what's the attrition rate, what am I doing to be a brand ambassador for the organization, and what am I thinking about in terms of making sure I've got the right people doing the right job at the right time. So you're wearing those hats: your functional hat and your talent hat. All leaders need to do that, from CEO to the most junior leader in the organization.
Yeah, love that. Woo, heavy subject. I know we're out of time. Corey, thank you so much. I can't even imagine. Like I think about data sometimes and putting a number to the quality of a hire, and that is like makes my head spin. But I feel like I feel like now that I know we attack it in the different angles, now I feel a little more at ease with it. So hopefully, so does the audience. We're attacking it at all different angles. I honest to God thought it was like we're pulling up a spreadsheet and had everyone's name on it, to be honest with you. I was like, okay, here we go. I love it. Thanks so much again, Covey. Thank you so much for hosting these every single month. If you need a sourcing best friend, whether it's inbound, outbound, Covey's definitely your go-to. All right. Thanks. See you next month.
Thanks, Brianna. Bye.